Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another session of Book Talk, which is a program that we've been doing at the Center for Book Arts for about 1.5 years. We've had a wide variety of speakers, from an ethnobotanist to a critic to a book artist, a poet, a photographer, and we're very happy to have Imi Maufe join us today from Norway. Imi is a British visual artist who's based now in Bergen, and she trained as a landscape architect. She got her MA in multidisciplinary printmaking from the University of West of England in Bristol in 2004. And Imi helped establish Codex Polaris, which is an artist-run group that promotes and creates opportunities such as exhibitions and collaborations for artists working with books in Norway and the Nordic countries. Codex Polaris organized the international focus at the Codex Book Fair and Symposium in California in 2019. The group founders and a collaborative project, Bibliotheque Nordica, have recently exhibited at Kristiansand Kunsthall, Norway, in a large-scale book art exhibition. I was lucky to collaborate on a piece for Imi's project, Voyage, Sea Journeys, Island Hopping, and Transoceanic Concepts, which is a section of artworks by 16 artists and the 2 artist curators, originally shown at Künstlerhaus Dortmund in Germany in 2013. This set is an edition of 50 copies and designed to function as a show in a box. Imi has a studio in Bergen Atelier Group and is currently working artistic research project at the Faculty of Design at the University of Bergen. She has work in international and private collections. I just want to let you know that we will have one more book talk for this season, and that will be on June 8th. Our speaker will be Corinna Zeltzman, and she will speak on printing politics in the 19th century Mexico. So I hope you will join us for that. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And when Imi is finished with her talk and presentation, I can read some of those questions to her. And depending on the size of our group, we may invite you to unmute yourself and ask some questions yourself. If anyone would like to use the live transcript at the bottom of your screen, you can click on that and that will be available for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Imi now. Very happy to have her join us. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome to everybody. And thank you very much, Roni, for inviting me to do this talk at the Center of Book Arts in New York. And it's a great pleasure to be able to do it without traveling. This book talk is going to be all about traveling and boxes and books, and how I've been working really in my practice for the last 20 years, and where my influences have come from, and the idea of the projects that I've been working on recently have very much to do with how you display artist books outside the book art fair. So I'm going to start with a presentation using slides, and then I'm going to show some physical objects so we can open the boxes together that I have here. So I'm going to start by sharing screen. And yeah, so this is Books Boxed on Tour, and probably a slightly mean thing to talk about when none of us can travel, but I hope it satisfies some of that travel lust that we're all craving maybe at the moment. I'm going to start with a few slides of influences of that you'll probably see run through my work, and they start during my childhood. I was very lucky to have parents that gave me fantastic things in my Christmas stocking every year, including there was always a boxed pocket library, which were a delight because they fitted into the size of my hand, and the noise of them being slipped back into the slipcase to protect them. And they were illustrated children's books in miniature format. So Baba, Winnie the Pooh, and one of my favorite, which was Maurice Sandak's The Nutshell Library, which you can see here has been well battered by use. Another item I had at home as a child was this jungle box. I've tried to find information about this, and I can't on the internet, but it was a very sort of flimsy made cardboard printed box, and the box opens out into a flat stage set, which you could play with these very square animals, which then all packed very perfectly back into the box. And this is about 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. So it's small and compact. We, as children, were always taken out of school in school time to go on holiday. And one of the premises for this was we had to write a children's travel journal. So I had a very early start to documenting through text and image experience of being in a new place. They weren't very well written, they're very boring, but I've carried on doing that in a way. And then from these memories that I write down, I often use them to make very short text-based work to try and document a journey or a new place. Hopping forward a good 30 years, I've been based in Bergen since 2009 in the studio, which is in the container harbour right in the city centre. So every day I have to walk past the ever-changing landscape of cargo containers which come in and out and are emptied of their contents and then packed again. And there's that mystery of not knowing what's inside these boxes and not knowing where they're going or where they're coming from. I'm now going to talk about boxed libraries, and which has been I've just sort of been researching this while writing this talk, because I suddenly thought a library is actually a box collection of books, albeit being in a large scale. But there are also small scale libraries, such as these examples of the public ships libraries, which came into effect in 1909 in Norway. And they were financed by badly behaved seafarers who had to pay fines for crimes that they'd done, and then were placed on ships to educate the sailors who traveled around the world, often away from land for many years, to traveling bookshelves, which were made for the gentry to take on maybe on their grand tour around Europe. And this example on the right is from Poland from the 18th century. To really the very beginning of public mobile libraries, as we call them in the UK, or traveling libraries, started off in a boxed format and were taken around, especially in America and the UK, taken to remote areas that didn't have a library facility in a version of a boxed carrying case, and were placed in shops and post offices for the general public. To libraries that actually travel themselves. So 2 examples, there's many fantastic wild and wacky versions of libraries all over the world, such as the Donkey Library in Colombia. There's also a Camel Library in Kenya, to this boat library in Norway, which sadly ceased to exist last year, but it's been going for decades. And it used to travel around the west coast of Norway, up and down the fjords to the remote communities there. And when it stopped in harbour, they would often have a theatre production on board. So all the kids would go on board, have a 30-minute theatre production, and then it would sail to the next port. And then we have the more traditional mobile library, which we're used to today, still serving, although slightly in decline, rural communities. And I included this book van from New York because I thought it's a fantastic square box on wheels. To the library on the right-hand side, which is the one that I grew up with in our the rural village in Norfolk. And I still have that fantastic excitement of climbing up the steps and the smell of the mobile library inside with all the books. And then that anticipation of forgetting the date when it arrived 2 weeks later that you couldn't exchange your books. So I think I've grown up very much with books around me. I'm going to mention a couple of works or reasons why books become boxed. And starting off with this one, a very practical example of how to use a box to store a book purely for the protection of the contents. A slipcase, a unique slipcase just with one book inside. To an expanded slipcase, and this example of Dieter Roth's collection of works, volume 1 to 20, which is also boxed as it has a lid. And again, a collection of books on a bookshelf packed into a box. And these two examples I've just shown are very much a standard format of a book in a box. To a non-standard artist book in a box, this time the box being used as a container to contain loose items. This is Tim Hopkins' Book of Disquiet. Tim has a press called Half Pint Press in London, where he letterpress prints his work. And this book is taking Fernando Pessoa's Book of Disquiet. When he died, he's a Portuguese author. When he died in the 1930s, he left a whole pile of notes that had no order to them and no instructions of how they should be printed. And this book has been edited as a standard book, where the editors have chosen which order they want the readers to read them, whereas Tim's done the opposite and has taken out 60 of the notes, letterpress printed them on various labels, bus tickets, slides, and even a pencil, packaged them in a box. And because of the packaging, you can then read them in a very random order. So more like the original pile of notes that were left when Pessoa died. Boxes as performance. This is one of the Fluxus movement from the 1960s and 70s, many boxed works that they created. This one, Water Yam by George Brecht, is a performance piece. So these cards are to be read as a performance, either privately, publicly, or in your imagination. And I think this is a really nice example of how a boxed work, however small, can actually fill a space, a bigger space than the box it is itself. And then we have boxes as exhibitions or museums. And this is Marcel Duchamp's well-known Box in a Suitcase, a fantastically intricate wooden construction that opens out in many different ways, both with slide out sections and pull out sections, can be thought of or displayed as a museum or exhibition. But it also requires handling, as many of the cards are printed on both sides. So it has that quality of you need to touch it and flip over pages. And it contains a collection of his works in a sort of miniature format, including replica artifacts and artist multiples. I'm now going to run through a collection of collaborative projects, some of them which Roni mentioned earlier, I've been working with Codex Polaris and independently. The box is a fantastic format to bring together a network of people, either for a specific project or to purely create a network. And the first two I'm going to mention are both Codex Polaris projects, which I've been fortunate to work with since I started it with Randy Strand and Rita Marhogue in 2013. And yeah, we're really striving to make book arts better known in the Nordic countries and take our works from the Nordic countries out into an international audience. So Posted Unposted, the Nordic Letterpress collaboration, was one of the first collective projects that we worked on. And I curated this with Lena Nordenstrom from GG Studios in Sweden. After we had a conversation about how do you find people working with letterpress printing in the Nordic countries, as it's not so prolific here as it is in Norway, America or England. So we did some digging and some research and found fantastic presses based on small islands in the middle of the forest and in the cities, and invited 24 artists to participate, 25 artists to participate, and with an addition of 40 C5 envelopes, which are a standard European size envelope, that had to have content. And both the content and the envelope were of equal importance. And they made them in an edition of 40. Each of the artists received a box in return. And since 2016, this has been touring to different venues. And I'm going to show a couple of the content here on slide. This is Bent Quistgaard from Denmark, which has been each of his editions went through the printing press 18 times, to Lena's example where she'd made a handmade envelope that opened out. So they came in all varieties. It was just the size that's standard, which is often a way that I've been working with these collaborative projects. And it's great to exhibit them at book fairs because you have that fantastic one-to-one communication with the public, but also for a project like this, even though the box is small, there's a lot of things to try and take out of it. So they don't really get the space that they deserve. So when we have the opportunity to show in an exhibition, I never give any rules to how they should be exhibited because I'd like the people that are installing to use their creativity to install. So this is at Gallery Vast i Gothenburg in Sweden. And then here at the center of the book in San Francisco as a Posted Unposted ++, an extended exhibition. So here we invited the participants to also contribute with extra works that they had made, bookworks in letterpress printing. And the center created a really nice catalogue to go with this exhibition. We have just completed a new version, which is Posted Unposted to British Isles. Here I curated it with Angie Butler from AB Press in the UK. And this one has been digitally launched at Impact 11 International Print Festival in Hong Kong. So I'm not going to show you more of this one because each envelope has its own short video. And I will put all the relevant websites in the chat at the end. Bibliotheque Nordica is our largest project to date, and it was curated by myself and in collaboration with Megan, Addy and Bent Quistgaard, both from Denmark. This one was designed specially for Codex Polaris's, where we organize the international focus at Codex Book Fair in California in 2019 with 6 stands. We had one for each country, who we invited a curator to create a stand for Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. And then the 6th stand was for Bibliotech Nordica, as a way to have the opportunity to introduce 82 new artists to the International Book Fair in America. Each artist had to contribute with an edition of 11 A6 6x4-inch books, and we made an edition of 10 boxes like this one, and the 11th book was returned to one of the artists randomly chosen in a special presentation pack. So here you can see it on a journey to the Royal Art Library in Copenhagen. It's very little. And here you can see it at the Frankfurt Book Fair, again getting lost among books here. And then the delight of being able to show it in an exhibition space. So this is Room for Books exhibition at Christiansand Kunsthal. We had a 50 square meter room, 150 square feet, with the opportunity to take all the books out of the box and display them in their true colors. The box contains a fantastic collection of all kinds of varieties of book art methods, fold-outs, concertinas, very complex map folds, and yeah, so this was a really exciting and really shows the way that a box work, which is easily portable. Bibliotheque Nordica has been designed so it fits as hand luggage on an aeroplane. Not that we can travel with aeroplanes at the moment, but yeah, so to make it very easy and also easy to send. I've just sent it to Iceland, where it will next be exhibited at the National Library in Reykjavik, starting in May or June for the whole summer. And again, leaving it up to the librarian and the group of Icelandic artists that were involved in Bibliotheque Nordica to make the exhibition. Voyage, Sea Journey, Island Hopping and Transoceanic Concepts, which Roni mentioned, was a large-scale exhibition that I curated in Dortmund, Künstlerhaus Dortmund in Germany in 2013 with Rona Ranch. And we had 200 applications who were interested in taking part. We invited 11 artists to display large-scale work, and I included 20 other artists in a book art section as part of the exhibition in its own right, and made this sea trunk or sailor's trunk to house the books in. And the exhibition included many works that filled a very large exhibition space. And afterwards, people were asking how it could be traveled. So I came up with a new concept, well, a different idea, because these was too difficult for us to travel due to the scale of it, with a box work. Voyage box contains 18 artworks. It's 15 by 15 centimeters. That was the stipulation for the artist to contribute with as a 2D piece of work, apart from John Cumming, who I allowed to do a 3D sculpture to fit with his. This is John's work on the bottom left here. Relating to the exhibition, the original exhibition. And here I'm going to show you some examples of how this voyage box has been transported. This is Nancy Campbell, who worked with Roni Gross on their piece presenting the work as a presentation in Iceland, and then in the library situations in Oxford University and Bergen Public Library in Norway, and the exhibition in East Carolina University of School of Arts, which Roni installed at the Borough's Welcome Gallery, to exhibitions in gallery spaces, two very different ones here, one in Orkney Islands and Voyage Box's last outing, which was in Kristiansand Kunsthall in Norway, as it's integrated into a project that I've now been working on for the last 20 years. So moving on to that project, talking about box travels, I'm going to finish this slide presentation with translating travels, which includes work, as I said, from the last 20 years. They're all about journeys and all about documentation of place. And I can't count how many works are in here. I sort of have given up. But it fits, everything fits into a half euro palette. So this, the size of this is 80 by 60 by 80, 2.5 by 2 by 2.5 feet, and contains a lot of works that I've completed whilst being on residencies or after being on a residency. So I'll go through a couple of those first before showing you what it looks like as an exhibition. I had no idea that this was never a plan to make a piece of work like this from the beginning. So it's something that's just been accumulating. And then in 2018, I was asked to create an exhibition at Edinburgh Printmakers in Scotland. And this was really where this first concept started. Finnish Countryside Alphabet is from a residency at Artelis Creative Art Centre. And I was there for a month, and I spent most of that month cycling round, collecting images of the wooden sheds and buildings in the Finnish countryside, and also wrote a text piece based on my experience of being there, having found an index card system in the local charity shop. So I'm often inspired by things that I discover along the way. Visual Arts and Rural Communities residency I did in 2007 and 8, a year-long experience of living in this grey building on the top left with the little studio at the very top left, which was behind High Green Manor, this fantastic Victorian pile right up on the Scottish border in an area, the least populated area in England. So I thought I was going to have a very quiet time in this very quiet landscape, but it was actually one of the most social years I've ever had, because the local population made things happen. A lot of things happened in the village hall. So I contributed with a Norwegian day where I invited, thinking first that it was just going to be quite a small affair with some Norwegian traditional cheese and a couple of films, which then turned into a whole day celebration with workshops, exhibitions generated from people in Norway and from the local community, and a 3-course traditional meal, including a lamb speciality. We also had fiddle players came over from Norway to entertain and do workshops with the local fiddle players. So it became a very cross-cultural event. I also documented, and a lot of these, like an event like this, I would then document in a book format. I also documented my travels around during the year. And at the end of the year, made 2 box collections, one called Living North of the North Tyne as a bookshelf version, and one as a suitcase version called Raffle Tickets and Midges. Raffle tickets are the sort of lottery system that every village hall survives off in the UK to raise money for different causes. And midges are terrible little black insects that come out and eat you when you want to be outside in the summer. And there's actually a jar of dead midges in this suitcase here. And both of them were designed for very different purposes. Living North of the North Tyne was designed to travel on a public library. Mobile library, sorry, which traveled through the valley, and people could take out the box just as they would take out a novel and have the artwork at home in their living rooms. And Raffle Tickets and Midges was designed to go on the back of a bicycle. And I cycled with it out of the valleys to schools and venues and met people along the way, where I had the opportunity to, again, explain and describe the project in a one-to-one situation or with a group of school kids sat in front of me. And at the end of the project, this was exhibited at Northern Print in Newcastle. Another project is LK243 Under Sail, a residency on board a sailing ship as part of the Tall Ships races in 2011. This is the route from Waterford in Ireland to Lerwick, Shetland, and over to Sweden. And the image underneath the sailing boat, that's the sailing boat that we were on. It was quite a small one. And there were 15 members of crew. And I didn't know the Tall Ships races was all about having 50% of the crew had to be between 15 and 24. And I ended up with 8 15-year-olds in a very, very tiny living space. So this was my only private space, was behind that curtain in the bunk, which was 2 meters long. And so I had about 1.5 feet or 40 centimeters of extra space between me and the bottom of my feet and that. So I made a box to go in that space, which I traveled with. I didn't have very much time to really do anything on the boat apart from 2 projects. We were sailing and racing, so we were sailing overnight. And yeah, it was all really about trying to survive. But during the voyage, I threw in 43 postcards, wooden postcards into the sea, which were stamped with their location and date. And I managed to collect 500 drawings from the general public of boats. And all of this is the bunk box that I had at the bottom of my bed. And I spent 6 months afterwards packing and making and putting down all the memories and the experiences that I'd had on the boat into this box. And it included 8 of the wooden postcards that were thrown out in the sea and found and returned to me. And that project is part of Translating Travels. Translating Travels gets unpacked. All the boxed work and the works that I've been doing are packed in these mini crates that are packed in the slightly bigger crates. And all the crates and packaging end up being the furniture in the exhibition. So this is it now in Kristiansand Kunsthall. We've just taken it down just to show you how that box explodes into a gallery space. So which contains prints, artist books, and different artifacts and sculptural works. And here you can see 3 of the works that I've mentioned. The one on the very left is the one from the mobile library. The one in the middle is Voyage Box, and the one on the right is the Sailing Trip project. So, and another project from Iceland. So I think I'm slightly fanatical about trying to get everything perfectly contained, and the satisfaction of the fact that all the legs and everything fit into the box also. And this is Translating Travels Suitcase, which is also part of that project, and it includes 16 books of work. And I'm going to finish books about journeys, and I'm going to finish this slideshow now, and I'm going to show you the actual box in real life. So, and I'm going to put these websites in the chat. So we're going to come out of here. I hope that wasn't too fast. There's lots of information in there. I could go on forever about all the stories that happen with my residencies. So I'm going to change the video here. No, first I'm going to put those are the websites in the chat, and now we're going to change the video. I've got a somebody helping me with the video. So here we've got a couple, of the books and a collection of other bookworks that I've got. I'm going to show you a few first, and then if there's any interest afterwards, we can maybe look at some of the other ones. Okay. This is Translating Travel's Suitcase. It opens out in 2 layers. And each of these books are individual books that aren't part of another project. So I'll just show you a few of them. We have 36 Tunnels and a Ferry, which is about a bus journey from Bergen to Røldal. And in the west coast of Norway, there are a lot of tunnels. So these are all the tunnels that we go through as we travel on a 5-hour bus journey. And then the book turns into a tunnel at the end. We have Walk Tarsit, which is a book from the year I had in North England about walking and trees and animals that were always being seen. And the animals were always watching you, and the trees were individual trees in a very heavily plantation forest area. To one of the first books I made when I was a student in Bristol, which is called Getting Lost. And it was about a rather disastrous bike journey of cycling for 2 hours and getting very lost. So it's a book that is to be read by getting lost. Most of these books are screen printed or letterpress. And then eventually I did arrive. To this version, which is called The History of Swimming. And this one's letterpress printed, and it's a collection of a text piece about experiences of swimming outdoors since childhood. So these are examples of me using very limited text, which I do in many of my works. I'm going to show you everything in here. No, I'm just going to leave that there. Sorry. Again, this one is Voyage Box. I'm really showing you these so you get an idea of the size. So this was John Cummings' seabird egg. And then inside is a catalogue from the original exhibition, which shows the large-scale works. And then I'm going to show you how the artist responded to scale. So this is Matthew Herring's version for the book, boxed version. And then this is Gunnar Jonsson's film that he showed in the exhibition. And then his version as paper postcards. And then I'll show you Nancy and Roni's version here. So a beautifully letterpress printed fold out. And this, I think this was a really interesting project. I didn't give anybody a color code for this, but everybody ended up sending work in that were orange or blue or gray. So a very nice, unthought of result. Very color coordinated. This one here is posted, unposted. Unpacks with a catalogue explaining which artists have made which work and why. And then the work comes out with 2 bands. And I like packaging things in packaging so that you have a suspense to get to the actual object. So I'll just show a few of these. This is Anatom Knutson from Norway. And she made a broadside letterpress printed of women artists working with letterpress. To Reykjavik Letterpress in Iceland created this one, the whole picture with pull-out contents. This one you may not be able to see, but it's a block of cheese here. And this one here, sushi. So quite often they don't have a theme. Well, this one doesn't have a theme. Voyage Box was very themed. And this is my contribution. When I was in America, I discovered American envelopes made out of very different paper than we're used to in the UK, and how they came in hundreds of different sizes. And these ones all tessellated very nicely. So, and then taking a word about posting onto each. I'll get there in the end. Get smaller and smaller, and even smaller, until the last one, which is unopened. Let's take this one away. I'll do this one first. This was raffle tickets and midges. Which opens out to show this and contains, I'll show this one, which is a unique book of the 3-tree walk that I did every 2 weeks, which contains a series of Polaroid images and of how the trees changed during the year until it became green. To the books that were made as in addition and were contained in both this one and the bookshelf version. So this is a collection of local words and dialect, so an alphabet book. This is the midges that are dead and hidden in the box, so they can't get out and eat us. And this is one of the books that was a result of the Norway Day Cabinet of Curiosities, where I invited the local community to contribute with different items they had at home that were made in Norway or were to do with Norway. So this was presented as a card set of, and presented in Norway Day as a museum piece. So this one, which was the result of the socks that you saw in the slide, Norway knits, ways to keep warm in winter. And these were stories of each of the socks and gloves that were contributed to the exhibition that we had for Norway Day. I must admit now, I never make my own wooden boxes. I always get somebody in the local area to make them for me. Apart from, I made all the chests for translating travels. And then here we have Bibliotheque Nordica, which opens up as a sliding cover, which can be slotted into the back. And I can't show you all 82 of these, but I will just pull out a couple of them to show you the variety. This one is by Jona Rasmussen from the Faroe Islands, and it opens out as a very long etching concertina with poem, handwritten Faroese poem on the inside, and bound with kid skin binding. To another example of a concertina. This is by Edward Jonsson in the Åland Islands, the islands between Sweden and Finland. And this one's lino printed, and it's all about how to go on a picnic. So like I said, this book box didn't have a theme to it, just the size of this A6 size. To Maja Albrecht from Finland's dry point fold out book of the beaks of crows. So very, very varied. To Jennifer's Bergqvist from Sweden, and if I've got really hot hands, this book changes colour, but I don't have hot enough hands right now. And it is about the Swedish arms trade. And this one by Elizabeth Riedland Nilsen from Norway, and it's called Gråstein. And there's a saying that you can change grey stone into gold. So this book's designed to just look like a grey stone, and then printed in gold, this word grey stone. And I think I'm going to leave it there and open up for questions. I'll say one more thing about this and then I'll open it up for questions. This Bibliotheque Nordica also comes with a collection of texts that Codex Polaris has been collecting from different writers and projects all about artist books in the Nordic countries. And this is something that we're continuing to work on at the moment.
Do they sell those, or is those trapped?
Change video.
Thank you, Imi. That was so interesting. I have a question, and then I'm going to read some of the questions that people have contributed. And if other people have more, please put them in the chat. I'm curious how you fund the travel of these shows.
Some of them are self-funded, and then we have a fantastic funding body in Norway. So I spend a lot of my time writing funding applications to both the Norwegian state funding, Bergen Kommune, the local municipality, and also especially for the international projects like Bibliotech Nordica, to funding from the Nordic countries, which requires you to have at least 3 different countries participating. So yeah,
I'm also curious how did you go from landscape architect to book artist, curator, whatever?
I realized I didn't like working in large scale, which is why I stopped doing landscape architecture. And when I started doing the MA at the art school, I thought I'll end up working with sculpture, and then realized I'm actually a very, very 2-dimensional person, but like the way that a book art, you can work in 3D in a flat way with books. So I think it was the wrong career choice to do landscape at the beginning, but it was also a really interesting way to learn about looking at the world and the landscape.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Mickey, who says, I love the variety of elements. Do you have an organization system for your traveling libraries, book boxes?
No. They're very organized in themselves, but I don't really have a system. And as you can see by my studio behind me, I'm probably one of the messiest people in the world. So I don't know how I quite managed to make very systematic works, but I think there's a difference between my chaoticness of working and the result of a project. But I think the only system I probably have is the instructions I give to the artists that I'm inviting to take part.
I'm curious if any of the artists in the projects also kind of help finding exhibition opportunities, or is that something that you solely do?
I do a lot of the work, but it's the joy of working with a group of people. So especially something like Voyage Box, most of those images that I showed, I had nothing to do with where they were exhibited. So it's, and especially when you end up, the people who take part end up with a copy, or in Voyage Box, they ended up with 2 copies. They can then take them to exhibition spaces. And also because of something like Posted and Posted, it's very easy to put in the post and send to somebody to then exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
So
we have a question from Oscar, and he says, what would your dream traveling book box set? For example, I wonder what a box set inspired by a trip not bound by terrestrial geographies in outer space travel would look like. That's a small question.
That's a small question. One of my dream projects was I really wanted to work on the book, the boat book. The book boat library, and travel with that for a season, because you get to live on the boat and then travel from harbour to harbour. But since that no longer exists, I'm going to have to find another dream somewhere. I don't know. These projects often take me a year or 2 from start to finish. And I always say I'm never going to do one again, and then itch to do another one. So we're hopefully going to take Posted Unposted to an international audience. So at the moment we've got Nordic countries and then British Isles, and there is a couple of other ones in the pipeline. So we want to do that as a geographical thing. I think I've got my feet on the ground and probably not going to end up in space.
Christy says, in the Visual Arts in Rural Communities project, when everyone contributed their Norwegian objects, were there that many people in the community that had Norwegian ancestry, or was it more like we're all surprisingly have more Norwegian things than we think, or something else altogether?
Something else altogether. It was because Northumberland, well, Norway and Bergen and Newcastle used to be joined by a ferry that for 60 years connected the 2 countries. So in Northumberland, most people had been to Norway, either on a school skiing trip or shopping trip. So there was a very big connection in the north of England with Norway. Unfortunately, that ferry stopped working a month before my cycle ride with the box. And the whole plan was that we would cycle to Newcastle, exhibit, and then take the ferry home again. And it didn't exist. So we had to make other plans.
Okay, I'm going to collapse kind of two questions. One, has COVID and the limitations of travel over the past year influenced your ideas for future work and projects? And the other question from another person is, are there any virtual projects you've been working on this year that aren't place-based?
I haven't been working on any virtual projects apart from digitalizing posted unposted that was shown in Hong Kong, if that counts as a virtual project. And COVID has had strange limitations. At the moment, I'm working on a Norwegian-Scottish project that luckily we managed to do 2 residencies, one in Norway and one in Scotland in 2018-19. And then last year we were meant to have an exhibition. And all the artists in that project are trying to make work. And I'm finding it really hard because I don't have the opportunity to go to Scotland to work with the person that I'm collaborating with in Scotland. So in that way, it feels like it's normal, but then at the same time, it makes working together much harder. Even though a lot of these works I do remotely, but you always have to put things together in a specific space, in a printing studio, or like Bibliotheque Nordica was put together in Denmark, where we had the use of Viborg Vingård's Officine, which is a fantastic museum in Viborg, Letterpress museum. So they gave us the space to make the collaboration happen.
Laura, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, future works at the moment. I never know what's going to happen in each of my years or what projects come in or go out. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't got itchy feet because I've been catching up with everything at the moment.
Laura wants to know how important is it that gallery visitors be able to handle the books?
It's important and not important. Sometimes I think like the one at Kristiansand Kunsthall, where everything was displayed on the shelves, we didn't actually have a handling policy for that, because I think they were displayed in a way that they were so visually strong. Whereas when I show them at a book fair, of course, it's incredibly important that people have the opportunity to handle. So I'm not very precious about handling. And I think very much, probably the most important thing is a spoken dialogue that I have with people when I'm showing work, when I have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to invite people to unmute themselves if they have a question, and feel free to ask.
I also have Tim's box here, if anybody would like to see that one, the Book of Disquiet. Okay, I've got a yes, please there. You might have to control the video. Okay, this is Tim's box, and he won the award at the Minnesota Book Art Prize 2 years ago. Yeah. So here, masses of different types. Everything's been letterpress printed on an Adana in his tiny studio. How well you can see this. We have all sorts of a receipt here that on the inside has been letterpress printed. Matt, and he used all of these things. He had to collect, he made this in an edition of 80, so he had to collect 80 pieces of the work so that he could then put them into each box. Lollipop stick. Bag. Tiny little bits of card. Here's the slide. So of course, each slide was different, but the same format. Little matchbox, book, and then with the type at the top. And there's the pencil, printed on an Adana. And some negatives, old black and white negatives of a wedding. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. He made an edition of 80 and they are all sold out. Brilliantly for Tim. I don't know how many years it took him to make it.
Somebody wants to know how you approach the design of the boxes, and does it happen at the end?
It happens at the end. Something like Voyage Box was easy to work out because I knew everything was going to be 15 by 15. I just didn't know the height. And then for that one, it was finding a box manufacturer. Something like Bibliotheque Nordica, when you invite 150 people and you don't know how many people are going to respond, they had a maximum thickness that they could use, which was an inch or 2 centimeters. So I didn't know the volume of work that I was going to end up with. So it's a very sort of slightly nail-biting week of, because I never do it from my own studio. I always do it with the people that I'm collaborating with. So that was in Denmark, and we fortunately had an amazing carpenter who was next door to the museum. So within that week, we worked out that we needed this much space for the box, and then I will design the box and then give the design to the maker of the box. So it's a very much last minute working out how it's going to work. And the design elements like the sliding door of that one on Bibliotheque Nordica, and how at the back it's got a sliding piece, so I can put a perspex covering over the front if I want to leave it open and not let people take the books.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm in Portland, Oregon. And I was wondering if you could say more about those conversations you have at the book fairs, and also about your working relationships with participants, say for the Norway and England project, and also the people who are contributing to the boxes. So three interactions. You have a social practice element to your work that I'd love to hear more about.
Yeah. I think it's like talking to you today. You get so much more of the inside of the story when you have that opportunity to be able to speak about your work. And I think a lot of my exhibiting has been at book art fairs, and I just love the way that you can talk to people and you get a feedback. When you exhibit work in an exhibition, you often have absolutely no contact with the public at all. So you place it there, walk away, and maybe there's a few comments in a comment book at the end. But you don't have that opportunity to just have it's very much a conversation like you would have around a dinner table. And I think this is hopefully, yeah, when you come up with stories and you have adventures. I remember getting very lost in Antwerp in Belgium once and explaining it to my father, and he turning around saying, it's just one of life's rich experiences. He wasn't really bothered that I was very lost somewhere, but yeah, and you end up with a story that you can tell. So I think a lot of the works here have a story behind them, especially when I'm on residency. And then with the collaborative projects, I think it's almost you start off on an unknown because you don't know who you're going to meet along the way. You don't know how the network's going to build up, because a lot of it's to do with researching, discovering new people, inviting either as an open call where you don't know who's going to apply, or working out who you really want to be part of the project. The one in Scotland was slightly different. It wasn't really a book art based project, but it's going to turn into a box project because we're getting a big box made for the artist work, which will first hopefully be exhibited in Norway in October, and then travel back to Scotland and travel around Scotland. I've had a lot of interesting experiences working with participations of collaborative projects from people getting really excited to be part of it. I don't always invite people that have made books before, so some of the books in Bibliotheque Nordica were where I wanted to challenge people to make a book because I really liked their work and I thought it suited the book art format. The same with Posted Unposted, challenged a few people to work with letterpress. And I think a lot of it's done very much on trust because I'm asking people to provide works. Sometimes I get funding so that I can pay the artist to be part of it. Sometimes I don't. But a lot of it's very much about the opportunity that being part of a collaborative project like this leads to exhibition possibilities that you wouldn't necessarily have as an individual, to being placed in archives and collections across the world. And also, you never know what's it going to lead to. So a lot of these artists end up meeting each other because they're part of a project and then going on to do other projects together. And I think that's when a project like this really works, that you've actually created a network through it. And for me, working with the collaborators that make these projects happen has just been incredible. So have very strong contacts to Norway and to Denmark and Sweden. And it's all part of that network. You never know where you're going to end up. I hope that
Oscar wants to know if we can expect an archive or library of these type of box bookworks. Is this maybe a long-term project of yours?
I think my archive is in Translating Travels, the project with all of my work in it. So I think I see that as an archive. The library archive of these Codex Polaris projects, that could possibly be a project. And then I also have a collection of small books of that I've been collecting for the last maybe 10 years from other artists. And all of those bookworks have to be under A6 size as well. So hoping one day that I'll make that into an archive. Yeah. Okay,
well, this was really fascinating. Thank you so much. I mean, if anybody doesn't have any other questions, I'm going to let Imi go. But this was a very, very interesting, wonderful talk, and happy to be with you. And so happy that you accepted our invitation. And maybe we can collaborate in some way.